Ryan sat inside the small cockpit of his scout ship, watching warning lights flicker across the console. The engine had failed hours ago, and the emergency systems were the only thing keeping him alive. The world below was his only choice. He guided the ship through the thick clouds, feeling the turbulence rattle against the hull. Finally, with a sharp jolt and a scraping sound, the vessel crashed onto the surface of the alien planet. The air was breathable. The ship had confirmed it before shutting down completely. Ryan stepped outside, feeling the ground under his boots. The soil had a faint glow, shining softly in the twilight sky. The place looked both beautiful and strange. Towering plants bent gently as if moved by an invisible current, and distant hills shimmered with patches of light. Ryan carried a survival pack over his shoulder. He knew he needed resources if he wanted to repair the ship. Food, water, and maybe something he could use as fuel. He scanned the horizon and chose a direction. The strange glowing grass rustled beneath his steps, and each sound echoed in the calm air. As he walked, he felt eyes on him. He turned quickly, but no one was there. The air carried a whispering sound, almost like laughter. He tightened his grip on the pack and kept walking. The sense of being watched grew stronger with every step. Then he saw her. A figure appeared between the glowing plants. She was unlike anyone Ryan had seen. Her skin carried a soft silver shine, glowing faintly in the low light. Her hair flowed like liquid strands, and her eyes held a brightness that looked playful rather than threatening. She stood barefoot, her movements light, almost floating as she walked closer. Ryan froze, his heart racing. He had prepared for many situations in deep space, but meeting a being like her was not in any manual. The alien girl tilted her head, studying him carefully. Her eyes traveled over his uniform, his boots, and the tools at his side. She raised her hand, and a wave of invisible energy passed through the air. Before Ryan could react, his uniform flickered and vanished. His pack slipped to the ground as he stumbled back in shock. The girl laughed, a sound like bells ringing in the wind. She covered her mouth with her hand, clearly amused by his reaction. To her, this was a harmless game. Ryan quickly grabbed his pack to cover himself, his face red with embarrassment. "What are you doing?" "That's not funny," he shouted, though his voice shook with both surprise and frustration. She tilted her head again, confused by his reaction. To her, clothing had no meaning. Her people had no need for such coverings, and she could not understand why this human seemed so troubled. She laughed again, circling him slowly, as if studying a rare animal. Ryan tried to stay calm. He took a deep breath and said, "Listen, I don't know what you are, but where I come from, we wear clothes for protection. For respect. Please give them back." The girl blinked. She lifted her hand and made the air shimmer again, but instead of returning his uniform, she only created an illusion. Around him appeared shifting colors, shapes of fabric that vanished when he tried to grab them. She laughed harder, clearly enjoying the game. Ryan clenched his teeth but forced himself not to shout again. He had learned that first contact required patience. If he wanted her help, anger would not work. He lowered his pack and stood tall, even though the situation was humiliating. "My name is Ryan," he said firmly. "I am a human from Earth. I came here by accident. I need resources to repair my ship. If you can understand me, I am asking for your help." The girl's laughter softened. She walked closer, her silver skin glowing in the dim light. Her curious eyes locked on his face. She reached out, almost touching his arm, then pulled back with a playful smile. She did not speak, but her expression showed she understood something of his words. Instead of giving back his uniform, she raised her hand again and pointed toward the distant hills. The ground shimmered, and for a brief moment Ryan saw images in the air. Flowing water, glowing crystals, and large fruit growing on high branches. Then the vision faded. Ryan understood. She was showing him where resources could be found. He sighed in relief. Maybe she was not an enemy. Maybe she wanted to test him first. Still, her idea of fun was far from what he considered polite. He adjusted the pack around himself and nodded. "Thank you," he said, keeping his voice calm. The girl smiled wider, clearly pleased. She turned away and began to walk toward the hills, looking back every few steps to see if he was following. Ryan had no choice. He needed those resources, and she seemed to know the land better than anyone. He followed, moving carefully over the glowing grass. The strange plants bent away from her as if they respected her presence. Her movements were light and graceful, as though the ground itself carried her forward. As they walked, she glanced back at him often. Each time she did, her smile returned, playful and teasing. It was clear she still found his discomfort amusing. To her, this was not cruelty, only curiosity mixed with humor. Ryan, though embarrassed, could not ignore the fact that she was helping. Without her, he might wander aimlessly until his survival pack ran dry. He reminded himself that cultural differences were part of exploration. To her, modesty was meaningless. To him, it was everything. Still, there was something about her laughter that made him pause. It was free, light, and carried no malice. Perhaps she was not mocking him but inviting him to see the world through her eyes. By the time they reached the base of the hills, the sky above had grown darker, painted with countless stars. Ryan looked up, spotting constellations he did not know. The alien girl stopped at a glowing stream and gestured toward it. Water. Fresh, flowing, and safe. Ryan knelt and filled a small container. He took a sip and felt the cool liquid calm his dry throat. He looked up at her and gave a small nod of thanks. For the first time, her playful smile softened into something gentler. She sat on a rock near the stream, watching him with curious eyes. She had tested the strange human, and he had reacted in ways she did not expect. Instead of fear or anger, he had shown patience. That made her curious. Ryan, still holding his pack close, realized this was only the beginning. He would need her help to survive here. But if she continued her strange games, it was going to be a very long journey. The alien girl laughed once more, her voice carrying through the night air. Ryan sighed, shaking his head, but could not help the faint smile that appeared on his lips. Even in her mischief, there was something strangely welcoming about her presence. The stream's gentle sound filled the air while Ryan sat on the soft glowing ground. His survival pack rested beside him, but he kept it close as if it were his last shield. The alien girl sat across the water, her silver skin shimmering in the faint light of the twin moons above. She still looked at him with a playful smile, the same one she had worn when she first stripped him of his clothes. Ryan cleared his throat. "I told you already. My name is Ryan. I come from Earth. Do you understand me at all?" The girl tilted her head, her bright eyes studying him. She did not reply in words. Instead, she tapped the side of her temple and then pointed at him. Ryan frowned. Did she mean she could understand his thoughts? Or was she only showing that she could read expressions? He tried again, speaking slowly. Humans wear clothes. Clothes are important. It is not funny to take them away. At this, the girl laughed. Her laughter was light, almost musical. She stood up, walked around the stream, and stopped in front of him. With one finger, she poked the fabric of the pack he was clutching tightly to cover himself. She raised her eyebrows as if asking why this mattered. Then she spun around, arms wide, her silver skin glowing brightly under the moons. To her, the world itself was her clothing, and modesty was a concept without meaning. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment. He could not believe this was happening. Of all the challenges he had prepared for in space, explaining human modesty to a playful alien girl was not one of them. "Listen," he said firmly, opening his eyes. "For me, clothes are not only for covering. They protect from cold, heat, and danger. And for humans, they are a sign of respect. Without them, we feel vulnerable." The girl tilted her head again. Her smile did not fade, but her eyes narrowed slightly, showing thought. She touched her own arm as if considering his words. Then she raised her hand, and the air shimmered once more. Ryan watched carefully. For a moment, his uniform flickered back into existence, wrapping around him as before. He let out a breath of relief, only for the image to fade again, leaving him exposed. The girl laughed loudly, holding her stomach as if this was the greatest joke she had ever seen. Ryan's patience was tested, but he reminded himself to stay calm. Losing control would only make things worse. He crossed his arms over his chest and glared at her. "You think this is all a game, don't you?" The girl nodded without hesitation, her eyes sparkling. She clapped her hands together like a child proud of her mischief. Ryan sighed heavily. He sat down again, realizing there was no way to force her to give back what she had taken. She held the power here, not him. If he wanted her help, he had to understand her world first. The girl, noticing his frustration, walked over and crouched beside him. For the first time, her smile softened. She reached out slowly and touched his forehead with the tip of her finger. In an instant, his vision filled with images. He saw great crystal towers rising into the sky, glowing rivers stretching across wide plains, and countless beings like her dancing in fields of light. None of them wore clothing. They moved freely, laughing and singing, their bodies glowing under strange suns. To them, the idea of covering themselves would be as strange as hiding their faces. The vision ended, and Ryan gasped softly. She had shared a piece of her world with him, not through words, but through pure thought. He looked at her differently now. She was not mocking him out of cruelty. She simply could not understand why humans cared so much about covering their bodies. Her laughter came from curiosity, not hatred. "I see," Ryan whispered, his voice calmer. "That is your way. But my way is different. If you want me to respect your customs, you must respect mine." The girl tilted her head again. Slowly, she nodded. Her eyes still carried amusement, but now there was a hint of recognition. She touched his pack and then stepped back, as if agreeing to give him space. For the next few minutes, they sat in silence. Ryan drank more water, while the girl played with glowing stones by the stream, making them hover in the air with a flick of her hand. Her powers seemed effortless, as if the world itself bent to her will. Ryan studied her carefully. She was powerful, curious, and unpredictable. But she had also shown him where to find water and had shared her vision. She was not an enemy, even if her humor pushed him to the edge of patience. Finally, she stood up and gestured toward the hills again. She wanted him to follow. Ryan rose, adjusted the pack around him once more, and walked behind her. As they moved, she looked back at him several times, her playful smile returning. At one point, she snapped her fingers, and his boots vanished, leaving him barefoot on the glowing soil. She laughed brightly, but this time Ryan only shook his head and kept walking. "You will not break me with tricks," he muttered. "If this is how your people test strangers, then I will pass your test." The girl raised her eyebrows, as if surprised by his calmness. For a moment, she did not laugh. Instead, she studied him with a more serious gaze. Then, almost reluctantly, she snapped her fingers again, and his boots returned. Ryan gave a small nod of thanks, though he said nothing more. By the time they reached the hills, the first light of dawn was rising. The glowing plants shifted colors, painting the land in shades of gold and green. The girl stopped at a large crystal formation and placed her hand against it. The structure pulsed with light, and a doorway appeared, opening into the hill itself. Ryan stared in wonder. It was not stone but living energy, shaped into a dwelling. She gestured for him to enter. He hesitated. This could be a trap, or it could be a chance to truly understand her people. Either way, he had little choice. His ship would not repair itself, and she was the only one guiding him so far. Taking a deep breath, Ryan stepped inside. The girl followed, her silver glow lighting the way. For the first time, Ryan realized that this was more than survival. This was a meeting of two worlds, and if he wanted to succeed, he would need to learn her ways just as much as she needed to learn his. The inside of the crystal dwelling glowed with a soft light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Ryan stepped carefully, his boots clicking against the smooth floor. The air inside was cool, with a faint sweet smell like flowers carried on a breeze. He felt as if he had walked into the heart of a living jewel. The alien girl walked ahead of him, her silver glow blending with the light of the walls. She moved as if she belonged to the place, every step graceful and effortless. She turned back to look at Ryan, her eyes still carrying that familiar playful spark, but this time her expression also showed something else. It was as if she was waiting to see if he would be impressed. Ryan gave a small nod. "This place is amazing." Her smile widened, clearly pleased that he had noticed. She waved her hand, and the walls shifted like liquid crystal. Images appeared, glowing across the surface. Ryan saw scenes of her world, her people dancing in circles beneath skies filled with twin moons, children leaping through fields of light, families resting near rivers that glowed brighter than fire. Ryan sat down on a crystal seat that rose from the floor as if responding to his presence. He watched closely, realizing that she was showing him her life, her culture. The teasing had stopped for the moment. This was her attempt to communicate in a way that words could not. The girl pointed to herself and said softly, "Lyra." Ryan blinked. It was the first word he had heard from her. Her voice was gentle, flowing like water. She touched her chest again and repeated, "Lyra." Ryan smiled faintly. "Lyra," he repeated. Then he pointed to himself. "Ryan." Her eyes lit up. She repeated his name carefully, her voice shaping the sound as if tasting it for the first time. "Ryan." For the first time, they had exchanged names. It felt like a step toward understanding. Lyra waved her hand again, and the walls changed once more. This time, they showed Ryan standing beside his broken ship. The image shifted, showing him walking across the glowing land. Then it showed him sitting here inside the crystal dwelling. She looked at him as if asking if she had understood his story. Ryan nodded slowly. Yes. That is me. My ship is broken. I need fuel and power to leave. Do you understand? She tilted her head, her silver hair flowing around her shoulders. With a flick of her fingers, she made the image of his ship appear again, but this time she added glowing streams of energy flowing into it. She then pointed at herself and gave a confident smile. Ryan's eyes widened. You can help me repair it? She did not answer with words, but her smile was enough. Relief washed over him, though he knew it would not be so simple. If she could truly repair his ship, why had she not done it already? Was she testing him? Lyra suddenly clapped her hands together. The walls shifted again, showing an image of a vast tree with glowing fruit. Then the scene changed to a sparkling cave filled with crystals. She pointed first at the tree, then at the cave, and finally back to his ship. Ryan understood. You are telling me I need to gather these things to fix my ship? She nodded, her eyes shining with excitement as if he were finally beginning to understand her language of images. For the next few hours, Lyra showed him more visions. She showed how her people lived without fear of cold or heat because their bodies generated energy. She showed him creatures that wandered the land, some peaceful, some dangerous. She even showed him how she could bend light itself, shaping it into illusions or tools. Ryan listened and watched, amazed at her abilities. Yet he noticed something else. Whenever she laughed, whenever she teased him with small tricks like making his boots vanish for only a second, it was always followed by her eyes searching his face for a reaction. It was not cruelty. It was curiosity. She wanted to know him. At one point, she waved her hand, and a table appeared between them, covered with glowing fruit. She picked one up, bit into it, and then offered one to him. Ryan studied it carefully. It glowed softly, the skin smooth and cool. He hesitated, unsure if it was safe. Lyra rolled her eyes playfully and took another bite of hers to show it was harmless. Ryan finally took a bite. The taste was unlike anything he had ever known. Sweet, refreshing, with a burst of cool energy that spread through his body. His tiredness faded in an instant. He stared at the fruit in wonder, then at her. She laughed again, pleased by his reaction. For the first time, Ryan laughed with her. It felt strange after all the embarrassment, but also good. The bond between them grew slowly. Ryan told her about Earth, drawing shapes on the crystal floor to explain mountains, oceans, and cities. Lyra watched closely, her eyes wide with curiosity. When he drew the shape of a house and pointed to it, she tilted her head in confusion, then created an illusion of her crystal dwelling over his drawing, as if showing that her people lived differently. They compared their worlds without words, using drawings, illusions, and gestures. Each difference brought laughter, surprise, and sometimes confusion. But through it all, Ryan began to feel less like a stranger and more like a guest. As night fell again, Lyra stood and gestured for him to follow. She led him outside the crystal dwelling to the hilltop. The twin moons hung above, casting silver light across the land. The glowing plants stretched for miles, painting the world in soft colors. Lyra pointed to the sky. With a flick of her hand, the stars shifted, forming the shape of Earth as Ryan had described it. He stared in shock, his heart beating faster. She had listened, understood, and now painted his home across the heavens. Ryan whispered, "Earth." Lyra repeated softly, "Earth." They stood together in silence, watching the glowing image in the sky. For the first time, Ryan felt a connection deeper than survival. This alien girl who had once mocked him now shared his longing for home. And he, in return, began to see her not as a trickster but as a bridge between two very different worlds. When they returned inside, Ryan settled against the glowing wall, his pack resting beside him. He still wished for his clothes back, but for the moment, he felt something more important had been given to him. Trust. Lyra sat nearby, her silver glow dimming slightly as she drifted into rest. Before closing her eyes, she looked at him one last time and whispered his name. Ryan. He smiled faintly and replied, "Good night, Lyra." The strange bond between human and alien had begun to grow, and neither of them knew how far it would take them. The morning light returned quickly on the alien world. The glowing plants shifted their colors from soft silver to bright green, as if welcoming the rising sun. Ryan woke inside the crystal dwelling, feeling more rested than he had since the crash. The fruit Lyra had given him still filled him with energy, and the strange air felt fresh in his lungs. Lyra was already awake. She stood near the doorway, her silver skin gleaming in the light. She raised her hand and motioned for him to follow. Ryan grabbed his pack and stood up, ready for whatever came next. They left the dwelling and climbed higher up the hill. From the top, Ryan saw the wide land stretching endlessly. Far in the distance, a great tree rose above all else, glowing like a tower of fire. Beside it shimmered caves filled with light. Ryan remembered the vision Lyra had shown him the night before. These were the places he needed to reach to repair his ship. Lyra pointed to the tree first, then to the caves, and finally toward the horizon where his ship had crashed. She was showing him the path they had to take. Ryan nodded. All right. Lead the way. They began the journey down the other side of the hill. At first the land was calm. The grass glowed gently, and strange insects floated in the air like drifting lanterns. Lyra moved with ease, every step graceful. Ryan, however, had to watch his footing carefully. The ground was uneven, and the plants sometimes shifted when he stepped on them, making the land feel alive. After hours of walking, they reached a valley. It was darker here, the plants dimmer, the air thicker. Ryan felt uneasy. He looked at Lyra, who had stopped and was staring at the shadows ahead. Her playful smile was gone, replaced by focus. What is it? Ryan asked. Before she could respond, a deep growl echoed through the valley. The sound rumbled in Ryan's chest, low and threatening. From the shadows emerged a massive creature. Its body was covered in scales that glowed faintly, its long limbs ending in sharp claws. Its eyes burned like hot coals as it fixed its gaze on them. Ryan froze. The creature was taller than any animal he had seen on Earth. Its movements were slow but powerful, each step making the ground tremble. Lyra raised her hand, and the air shimmered with light. She created an illusion of herself standing to the side, trying to distract the beast. For a moment, the creature turned its head toward the false image. But then it sniffed the air and focused back on the real pair. It can smell us, Ryan said quietly. The creature roared, shaking the valley. Without warning, it charged. Ryan had no weapon, only his pack and his determination. He grabbed a shard of crystal from the ground and held it like a blade. Lyra spread her arms, bending the light around her to create a glowing shield. The beast slammed against it, sending shock waves through the air. The shield cracked under the force, and Lyra stumbled backward. Ryan ran forward, shouting to draw the creature's attention away from her. He slashed at its leg with the crystal shard. The blow barely scratched its scales, but the sudden sting made the beast swing its head toward him. "Come on, you ugly thing," Ryan muttered, stepping back as the creature lunged. He dodged to the side, rolling across the glowing grass. The beast snapped its jaws where he had stood a moment before. Lyra recovered and sent beams of light toward the creature's eyes. It howled in pain, shaking its head. Ryan took the chance to throw a rock at its nose. The impact was small, but it distracted the beast long enough for him to grab Lyra's arm. "Run," he shouted. Together they sprinted across the valley, the ground shaking as the creature chased them. Ryan's lungs burned, but he pushed himself harder. He knew that if he slowed down, they would not survive. They reached a narrow gap between two large crystal formations. Ryan shoved Lyra through first, then squeezed in after her. The beast roared, slamming against the crystals, but its massive body was too large to follow. It clawed at the entrance, its hot breath filling the air, but after several minutes it finally turned away, defeated. Ryan collapsed against the crystal wall, gasping for air. His heart pounded in his chest, and sweat dripped down his face. Lyra stood nearby, her silver glow flickering weakly. She looked at him with wide eyes, her expression filled with something he had not seen before. Respect. He forced a weak smile. "Well, that was fun." Lyra blinked, then let out a small laugh. It was not her usual playful laugh. This one carried relief, almost gratitude. She touched his arm gently, her eyes softer than ever. For the first time, Ryan realized she had not expected him to fight. She had power, illusions, and light, but she had never faced danger with raw determination. He had no powers, only his will, yet he had thrown himself between her and the beast without hesitation. They rested inside the crystal gap for a while, listening to the distant sounds of the valley. When Ryan finally stood, Lyra moved closer and pointed at his chest. She said his name softly, "Ryan," then placed her hand over her own heart. He understood. She was thanking him. "You would have done the same," he replied. Though in truth, he was not sure she would have. But maybe now she would. They continued their journey once the danger had passed. The land grew brighter again as they left the valley behind. The great tree came into view, closer now, its glowing fruit hanging like lanterns in the sky. As they walked, Ryan noticed a change in Lyra. She still smiled at him, but it was no longer just the playful smile of a trickster. There was admiration in her gaze, a new understanding. She had seen that humans, though fragile compared to her people, carried a strength she had not known. By the time they reached the edge of the forest that surrounded the great tree, the bond between them had changed. They were no longer a curious alien and a stranded human. They were partners facing the same path, bound by the challenge they had survived together. The adventure was far from over, but for the first time, Ryan felt that maybe he was not alone on this strange world. The forest around the great glowing tree was alive with soft light. Each leaf shimmered faintly, and the branches stretched high into the sky like arms reaching for the heavens. Ryan stopped at the edge, staring upward. The tree was larger than any building he had ever seen, its roots spreading wide into the glowing ground. Beside him, Lyra stood calmly. Her silver skin reflected the tree's golden glow. She looked at him with a gentle smile, then stepped forward, motioning for him to follow. Ryan adjusted the strap of his survival pack and walked into the forest. The air here was different, heavier with the sweet scent of fruit and flowers. The sounds of distant water and soft humming filled the air. He soon realized the humming was not just the forest but voices. From between the glowing roots, more figures appeared. They were like Lyra, silver-skinned with bright eyes and flowing movements. Some glowed more strongly, some less, but all carried the same graceful aura. They surrounded Ryan, curious but cautious. Ryan stopped, his heart beating faster. He had expected to meet her people eventually, but he had not prepared for so many eyes watching him at once. Lyra stepped forward and raised her hand, speaking in her own language. The others listened, their expressions shifting from curiosity to amusement. Several of them laughed, the same musical laughter Ryan had come to know from Lyra. They looked at him as if he were an unusual animal brought into their home. Ryan tightened his grip on his pack. He hated being the center of their laughter, but he forced himself to stay calm. He reminded himself that they did not mean harm. To them, he was simply strange. One of the taller figures stepped forward. His glow was brighter than the others, and his voice was deeper. He pointed at Ryan, then spoke to Lyra. She replied quickly, gesturing at Ryan with a playful tone. The taller one frowned slightly, then nodded. Ryan looked at Lyra. "What's happening?" Lyra turned to him, her smile returning. She tapped her temple, then drew a circle in the air. He had learned enough of her gestures to guess what she meant. A test. Ryan sighed. Of course. They don't believe me. They want me to prove myself. The tall alien clapped his hands, and the ground shimmered. From the roots of the great tree, a crystal structure rose. It formed into a maze of glowing walls, shifting slowly as if alive. The aliens gestured for Ryan to enter. Lyra touched his shoulder gently. Her eyes told him to be careful, but her smile carried trust. She believed he could succeed. Ryan took a deep breath and stepped into the maze. The walls were tall and smooth, glowing faintly. They shifted and changed as he walked, closing off paths and opening new ones. The air inside was thick, and the ground uneven. He could hear faint laughter from outside, the voices of Lyra's people watching his every move. At first, Ryan felt overwhelmed. He had no map, no guide, and no idea where the exit was. But he reminded himself that humans had survived worse. His ancestors had crossed oceans, climbed mountains, and faced storms. If they could do it, so could he. He touched the walls, noticing the faint hum they gave off. Each wall vibrated differently, some high, some low. He realized the sound could guide him. Following the lowest hum, he found paths that stayed open longer. Slowly, he moved deeper into the maze, using sound and instinct to find his way. At one point, a wall closed suddenly, trapping him in a dead end. He looked around, then used his survival pack. From it, he pulled a small tool and pressed it against the wall. The crystal vibrated, and with enough pressure, the wall shifted just enough for him to slip through. From outside, he heard surprised gasps. The aliens had not expected him to use tools so cleverly. The maze grew more difficult the deeper he went. At one point, glowing mist filled the air, blinding him. Ryan closed his eyes and relied on his hands and ears, feeling the walls and listening to the vibrations. He moved slowly, step by step, until he found the way out of the mist. His heart pounded, his body tired, but he pressed on. Finally, after what felt like hours, he saw the exit. Light poured in from the opening, brighter than anything inside the maze. With a final push, he stepped out. The aliens waiting outside fell silent. For a long moment, they stared at him, their glowing eyes filled with surprise. Then, slowly, the tall one nodded in approval. Lyra rushed to Ryan's side, her smile brighter than ever. She clapped her hands and laughed, her joy echoing through the forest. She touched his arm and said his name proudly, Ryan. Ryan, still catching his breath, gave a tired smile. Told you I could do it? The tall alien stepped forward and extended his hand. Ryan hesitated, then placed his own hand against it. The alien's touch was warm, and in that moment, respect passed between them. The laughter around him changed. It was no longer mocking but filled with welcome. The aliens had tested him, and he had succeeded. That night, they allowed him to stay among them. They offered him more glowing fruit and water, and even a place to rest near the roots of the great tree. Ryan felt the weight of their eyes still upon him, but now it was different. They no longer saw him as only a curiosity. They saw him as someone worthy of standing among them. Lyra sat beside him, her silver glow soft in the night. She leaned closer and whispered his name again. Her eyes carried pride, and something warmer. Ryan looked at the stars above the glowing tree. For the first time since the crash, he felt hope. He was still far from repairing his ship, but he was no longer alone. The turning point had come. Humanity, through him, had proven its strength in a world that did not understand it. And the bond between Ryan and Lyra grew stronger with every passing moment. The first rays of the twin suns spread across the glowing forest. The great tree shimmered with golden light, its roots shining like rivers of fire. Birds with crystal feathers sang in high voices, their wings scattering sparks as they flew. Ryan woke from his resting spot near the roots. His body ached from the trial of the maze, but his spirit felt lighter. For the first time since his ship had fallen from the sky, he was not only surviving. He was being accepted. When he sat up, he found Lyra waiting. She had brought a small bowl of glowing fruit. Her silver hands offered it to him, and her bright eyes carried warmth. Ryan smiled, taking one of the fruits. Its taste was sweet, almost like honey mixed with citrus. You are stronger than they thought, Lyra said softly, her words careful but clear. She had been learning more of his language. Each day her voice grew closer to his way of speaking. And smarter than they guessed, Ryan added with a tired grin. Though I was close to losing in there. Lyra laughed gently, shaking her head. You won. That is what matters. The other aliens soon gathered near the tree. They watched Ryan as they always did, but now their eyes no longer held amusement. They studied him with interest, testing him in small ways. One handed him a carved tool shaped like a spear. Another placed strange seeds into his hand. They were not mocking him. They were asking him to join their work. Ryan understood. If he wanted their full respect, he could not stop with one test. He had to live as they lived. He spent the morning helping them gather fruit from high branches. His climbing skills impressed them. Though they could float lightly upward with ease, Ryan used ropes and knots. His hands grew raw, but he managed to fill his basket quickly. The aliens clapped, their soft laughter carrying respect this time. Later, they brought him to a river that glowed faintly blue. The water was pure, but fast currents made crossing difficult. The aliens danced across with graceful steps, their bodies flowing like water itself. Ryan, lacking their gift, built a simple bridge from fallen logs and vines. It was rough, but it worked. When the others saw it, their glowing eyes widened. They whispered among themselves, surprised at his way of solving problems. Lyra walked across the bridge first, her feet pressing lightly against the wood. She looked back at him with pride. "Your way is different," she said. "But it works." That evening, the tall alien leader returned. His glow was brighter than the rest, and his voice carried authority. He studied Ryan in silence, then motioned for him to follow. Ryan glanced at Lyra, and she nodded. They walked deep into the forest until they reached a clearing where ancient stones stood in circles. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the ground. The leader placed his hand on the largest stone, and it shimmered. Images appeared in the air above it. Ryan saw visions of the sky filled with fire, great ships soaring, and battles fought long ago. The aliens had once been warriors, protectors of their world. But they had turned away from war, choosing peace and harmony instead. The leader pointed at the images, then at Ryan. Ryan understood. They feared his kind. They remembered destruction, and they worried that humans might bring the same. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the stone. His reflection appeared in the glowing surface. For a moment, he felt small under their history. But then he remembered the maze, the bridge, the fruit. He remembered how humans had always adapted, always found a way to survive without giving up hope. "I am not here to destroy," Ryan said firmly. "I am here to learn. To live." The leader's glowing eyes softened. He did not answer in words but placed his hand over Ryan's, pressing firmly. It was a silent agreement. When they returned to the village, the people gathered around. Lyra watched closely as the leader raised his hand and spoke in their musical language. The others cheered, their laughter ringing out like bells. Ryan could not understand every word, but he knew what had happened. He had been accepted. That night was filled with celebration. The aliens danced around the great tree, their glowing bodies moving in circles of light. They sang songs that carried through the forest, each note echoing with harmony. Ryan joined, clapping his hands in rhythm even if he did not know the words. Lyra stayed by his side, her glow soft and steady. She leaned closer and spoke quietly, almost shyly. "They see you as one of us now." Ryan looked at her, his heart warming. "That's because of you. Without you, I would still be lost." Lyra shook her head gently. "No. You walked the maze. You built the bridge. You proved yourself." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world felt quiet. The celebration continued around them, but between the two of them there was only silence and light. The night stretched on, filled with song and laughter. Ryan felt a strange peace settle within him. He still had no ship. He still had no way home. But for the first time, he wondered if going home was what he truly wanted. As the suns began to rise again, he sat beside Lyra under the great tree. She leaned against him, her silver glow mixing with the golden light of dawn. Ryan closed his eyes, letting the warmth wash over him. He thought of Earth, of the people who had sent him into the stars. Then he thought of this world, of the glowing forest and the silver-skinned girl who had chosen to guide him instead of leaving him alone. Perhaps, he thought, this was what humanity was meant to do. Not only to explore, but to learn, to connect, to prove that even in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, a human heart could find a place. Ryan opened his eyes and looked at Lyra. She smiled, and in that simple gesture, he knew that respect was not only earned. It was shared. The twin suns rose slowly over the glowing forest. Their light scattered through the crystal leaves, painting the world in shades of gold and silver. Ryan stood at the edge of the village, looking out at the path that would lead him back to his ship. The time had come to leave, but he felt a weight in his chest he had not expected. Lyra appeared beside him, her silver glow reflecting the rising light. She carried a small bundle of supplies, enough for the journey back to his ship. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something deeper. She had changed during their time together, and he knew he had too. "You are ready," she said softly. Ryan nodded, but he did not speak. Words seemed small compared to the bond they shared. He adjusted his pack and looked at the path ahead. Beyond the glowing hills and forests lay his ship, waiting for repairs, and beyond that, the vast expanse of space and home. Lyra reached out and touched his shoulder. Her silver fingers were warm, grounding him. "You have shown us your strength," she said. "Your courage. Your mind. You have earned our respect, Ryan." He smiled faintly. "And you have shown me yours." He looked at her carefully. "Without your guidance, I would not have survived here. You trusted me, even when I seemed weak." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "Weak? No. You are human. Humans survive in ways we cannot imagine. That is your strength. That is why I chose to help you." Ryan's heart lifted. All his struggles, the maze, the beasts, the tests, they had all been part of proving that humans could endure and adapt. And now, standing here beside Lyra, he understood that those traits were what made humans special. The village elders appeared, their glows steady and welcoming. They placed their hands together in a gesture Ryan had learned to recognize as respect. One elder stepped forward and touched his chest lightly, then pointed toward the sky. It was a silent acknowledgement of his journey, and a silent blessing for the path ahead. Ryan nodded respectfully. He bowed slightly. Though he did not fully understand their language, the meaning was clear. Lyra handed him the bundle she had carried. Inside were fruits, water, and some small crystals she had fashioned into tools. "These will help you on your way," she said. Ryan took them carefully. "Thank you, Lyra. I will not forget this world, or what you and your people have taught me." She smiled faintly, then hesitated. For a moment, it seemed she wanted to say more, but the words did not come. Instead, she touched his hand lightly, a simple gesture that carried more meaning than words ever could. They began the walk toward the ship together. The path was familiar now, marked by the glowing plants and crystal formations they had crossed before. Each step reminded Ryan of the challenges they had faced together. He had survived the dangers of the land, earned the trust of a powerful alien species, and formed a bond with a being unlike any he had ever known. As they reached the valley where the beast had once chased them, Ryan paused. The memory of fear, adrenaline, and determination surged through him. He had faced danger with nothing but courage and quick thinking. That had been the moment Lyra and her people had truly seen him. Lyra noticed his pause and rested a hand on his shoulder. "You are ready," she repeated. "Not because of tools or strength, but because of your mind and your heart." Ryan nodded, feeling a quiet pride. Humanity's greatest power was not in technology or weapons, but in resilience, creativity, and courage. On this alien world, far from Earth, those qualities had carried him through every challenge. Finally, they reached the clearing where his scout ship had lain broken. Ryan's heart lifted. With the supplies Lyra had given him, he could repair the energy core and power the engines. The familiar hum of machinery, the metal hull, and the control panels were a comfort after weeks of uncertainty. Lyra stepped back, giving him space to work. Ryan set to work immediately. The glowing fruits provided energy in a way he had never imagined, and the crystals acted as conductors. Lyra watched quietly, offering small adjustments with her abilities when necessary. Together, human ingenuity and alien power merged into a solution that neither could have achieved alone. Hours later, the engines hummed. The ship vibrated lightly as the systems came online. Ryan tested the controls carefully. Everything responded. He leaned back against the hull, exhausted but triumphant. Lyra stood beside him. "It is ready," she said simply. Ryan smiled. "Thanks to you." She shook her head. "You earned it. You survived. You learned. You proved that humans are more than they seem. That is why we respect you." The twin suns were now high in the sky, casting golden light across the land. Ryan opened the cockpit, preparing to leave. He looked at Lyra one last time. "I will carry this world with me. And I will carry you in my memory." She nodded, her silver glow brightening. "And I will remember you, Ryan. You have changed how we see humans. Perhaps one day, we will meet again." Ryan climbed into the cockpit. The engines roared to life. The glow from the ship mixed with the sunlight, reflecting off the crystals around him. Lyra waved as the ship lifted from the ground, her figure glowing more brightly than ever before. Ryan guided the ship into the sky, watching as the forest, the glowing hills, and the great tree disappeared beneath him. Yet he did not feel sadness. He felt pride. Humanity had been seen, understood, and respected by a world unlike any other. And through courage, patience, and heart, he had proven that humans could endure anything. As he soared toward the stars, Ryan took one last look at the alien planet. He knew that wherever he went next, whatever dangers awaited, he carried something far more powerful than technology. He carried the spirit of humanity, the ability to face the unknown, adapt, and rise with dignity. The ship left the atmosphere and entered space. Stars stretched endlessly before him. He thought of Earth, of the people who had sent him out into the galaxy. And he thought of Lyra, of the silver-skinned girl who had laughed at him at first, then guided him, then respected him. Ryan smiled. Humanity had left a mark on another world. And on this alien world, a human had proved that courage, intelligence, and heart could earn respect anywhere in the universe. He adjusted the controls, guiding the ship toward home. The journey was not over, but he had already succeeded in the most important way. He had shown that humans, even alone and far from home, could rise to meet any challenge, and that even in the vast unknown of space, humanity could be recognized as strong, capable, and worthy. Lyra's image remained in his memory, glowing silver and laughing softly. The world below might fade from sight, but the lessons and respect he had earned would remain forever. Ryan pressed the throttle. Stars stretched into streaks of light. He felt the power of the ship beneath him, and the power of humanity inside him. He was ready for whatever came next.